Hi, I'm Jessica Rudnicki with Reynolds & Reynolds. Welcome back to Connected. Today we're talking to Reynolds Consulting Services Manager Alex Abramovich about onboarding tips and best practices. Whether you're filling new positions or bringing personnel back into the dealership, it's so important to get this part of the employee process right. Let's get connected. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
It is so great to have you here. And Alex, we're here today to talk about the onboarding process and getting dealership staff comfortable in their roles. So this is particularly important right now because as business is picking back up for dealers, many are expanding their teams or filling positions and roles that maybe had been temporarily eliminated due to COVID-19. So let's start with why the onboarding process is so important. What can be gained for dealers who really invest the time in a good process here? And what might dealers potentially be sacrificing if they don't have a structured onboarding and training process in place?
Sure, it's a very good question. With a good onboarding process, basically allows the dealer to let the employees feel comfortable in their new role. It allows it increases their productivity because the employees know exactly what is expected of them. It also increases the company satisfaction or employee satisfaction with the company, thus giving them longevity with the company. On the flip side, if you don't have a good onboarding process, you have employees who are lost from day one, who might feel underappreciated, who might feel they don't have all the tools in their toolbox that they need to succeed, and thus they become well, eventually disgruntled and leave. That causes a lot of issues because number one, you have to fill a position, which you may be losing money because that position is revenue generating. It costs money to get an employee, and it costs time and money to train an employee. So
Yeah,
that's why.
yeah. Okay, great. So it's clearly important to have an onboarding process in place, right? So I think that you've really established that. Great tips. What are some best practices that you've seen dealerships using? So what components should my onboarding process have?
So first of all, you have to have goals which are defined, which are presented clearly to the employee, so the employee knows why did they get hired, what do you expect of them. Also, have a team approach. Make sure that the employee meets the different departments. That includes the HR department, that includes their superiors, their direct supervisors, but also their team members, and have everybody be involved in that onboarding process. Make the employee feel comfortable and also familiar with the work environment. Um, Explain the corporate culture. They need to know what is expected and what is the culture. How do we dress? How do we approach the different aspects of our work? And also, one-on-one mentoring. One-on-one mentoring helps a lot in terms of getting that employee to really grasp what they need to do and know that they have somebody that they can always reach out to if they have questions. So those are some of the biggest items that you need to make sure you have on your list when you're onboarding somebody.
Sure. I know as a Reynolds employee, when I first started a couple of years ago, you go around and you meet your team and you meet, the executives. And so it's super important. And I'm definitely, I mean, I love my job. I'll be here forever. But it was definitely part of that investment in the beginning for this company. So definitely agree with you there. It's so important for employees to feel comfortable using the tools that they need to be successful in their roles. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Um, it also makes the dealership more successful, right? Because Alex, you touched on you touched on the tools that dealership employees use. So what are some strategies that dealers can use to make sure employees understand how to navigate and operate those systems to help make them more efficient?
So number one, have a manual, a job manual. Always helps the employee to refer back to it. Another item is make sure that the employee is set up with all of the tools, accesses, usernames, and passwords that they will need to use on day one. So they're not chasing you over the next couple of weeks trying to get access to things that they should have had access to start with. Number one, a new employee may not know whom to ask, where to go, thus make them less effective, and also waste their time, waste your time, and waste the person who's training them their time as well. It is also good to have a developed training practices. Who is training them? Make sure it's somebody who is good at teaching. Just because an employee is a good employee doesn't necessarily make them a good mentor. Just because somebody is a top producer doesn't necessarily make them a good mentor. They need to be apt to mentoring. The other things that you need to know is that we as humans, we learn in three ways. We learn auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. If you include all three of those aspects into your training, you'll increase the retention of the material that is taught to the new employee. Another thing is that you have to have a continuous training for your employees. Don't just stop at the first week or 2 weeks when you train them, because especially in the dealership world, our world changes constantly. The consumer behaviors change. Our products change every year. That means that whether you're hiring a technician, an advisor, or a salesperson, or somebody in your accounting department, well, they need to know all the different changes that come from the manufacturers. So have a continuous training process as well. That is something that's very, very, very important. You have to have somebody who does your training, be it internal,
Absolutely.
be it external.
Yeah, definitely. Alex, I'm curious. So I'm a visual learner. As a consulting manager who's in dealerships all the time, what do you see most of? Just out of curiosity.
Actually, with Reynolds Consulting, we have developed our coaching process to include all three,
Oh, that's
because
good.
we as a group have people within our group who learn different ways, who are better one way or the other. Now, when you work with an audience of 10, 20, 50, 200 employees, well, you're definitely going to have employees that fit every one of those three categories. So if you hit all three, your chances are that everybody's going to retain the information much better than if you concentrate on just one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. That's helpful to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that, if you are training, like you said, groups of 10, 15, 100, it's definitely important that you make sure that that message resonates with all types of learners. So good.
Correct.
So if I'm newly employed at a dealership, in your opinion, what is the most important part of the onboarding process? So can you tell me one thing that dealers can't forget to teach new employees as they start with the dealership?
Actually, there are two things that I always preach, and that we have found that are extremely important over the years of our experience. Those two things are expectations. Let the employee know what is the expectation of their position. And two is process. Have a process for that onboarding. Without those two, your employees are not set up for success, thus meaning that you're not set up for success as an employer.
Yeah. Okay, you hear that, everyone? Success equals expectations and processes. Note that down. Good, Alex. Thank you again for sharing these tips and best practices, and for kind of educating everyone on how to onboard successfully. And thanks again for being here today. Before we hop off, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
Whatever you do not forgo an onboarding process, because that is the most important part that you're going to do with those who work for you. Without it, you'll end up with a workforce who is not competent in the job that you want them to do, who are not as effective, and thus not as profitable for you as an organization.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, Alex, and thanks again for being here today.
Thank you.
Alex shared some great tips with us today on how to get employees up to speed. Before we hop off, just a quick reminder, you can watch or listen to past and future podcast episodes on YouTube or Apple and Spotify podcasts by searching for the Connected Podcast. Subscribe on these channels to get notified every Wednesday when new episodes are released. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.